You are watching the world 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Prime Minister Modi lands in Brazil during the second leg of his three-nation tour. Our Prime Minister will attend the 19th G20 Leaders Summit in Brazil, which starts today. Bangladesh's interim leader Muhammad Yunus has appealed for the nation's patience, pledging that general elections would be held after electoral and institutional reforms were completed in a televised address marking 100 days in office. Russia unleashed its largest wave of airstrikes on Ukraine in almost 3 months, firing 120 missiles and 90 drones in a sweeping attack that killed at least 7 people and caused severe damage to the power system in Kyiv. At likely their last face-to-face meeting, US President Joe Biden and China Xi Jinping sounded caution over deteriorating relations as Washington transitions to a new Trump administration. On the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Peru, Biden stressed the need for open communication with Beijing. India is ready to launch from USA its most sophisticated communication satellite, named GSAT-M2, using SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The satellite, when operational, will provide data or internet services to remote areas and will enable availability of internet in airplanes. Tata is set to take a majority stake in an Apple iPhone manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu, Reuters is reporting. The purchase means Tata will be in competition with Taiwan's Foxconn as one of Apple's largest contract suppliers. Scientists have created a new artificial intelligence model that can decode and design entire genomic sequences. In fact, trained on a data set of 2.7 million microbial genomes, EVO can predict, generate and engineer the blueprints for biology at a large scale and accuracy older models were incapable of, the researchers argue. Well, our big focus, Prime Minister Modi is geared up for a high-stakes diplomatic mission as he landed in Brazil for the 19th G20 summit that starts today in Rio. The summit promises to be a pivotal moment on the global stage, but before that, the Prime Minister was in Nigeria, where key talks and crucial agreements in sectors like defense and energy were on the table. Now that he's off to Brazil and landed there, the Prime Minister will meet fellow leaders and continue building on India's growing influence. This year, Brazil is carrying forward India's legacy, is what our Prime Minister has said, as he prepared for intense bilateral meetings. Also, this summit marks one of the final international engagements of the US President Joe Biden's tenure before Trump's new administration takes over in January. The G20 summit is expected to draw other international leaders, though I must mention that Russian President Vladimir Putin, who had skipped last year's summit in New Delhi, is unlikely to reach Rio this year as well. My colleague Mohammad Ghazali has been tracking the Prime Minister's visit very closely. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, take us through Prime Minister Modi's G20 agenda.
See, it will be very important to see what kind of statements will be issued in G20 summit in Brazil, because whatever declarations were issued last year when it was hosted by India, it will be reviewed upon, and India also being a Troika member alongside Brazil and South Africa in the BRICS is a very important member of the BRICS. And more than that, what will be more interesting to see is that what will be India's stand when it comes to the global conflict, be it Russia, Ukraine, be it the turmoil in the West Asia. And alongside, there are many agenda when it comes to global issues and global challenges of energy sector and green energy, hydrogen energy. These are certain issues on which Prime Minister will be addressing there. And also, Prime Minister has reached there from Nigeria. So we saw that what kind of engagement he had there, the outreach in the African region, the West African region. G20 will be very important because last year it was India which hosted it, and it has now given the chair to the to Brazil. So a lot of other engagements, bilateral talks are expected in the G20 summit.
As always, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with that update. Alongside our Prime Minister, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Joe Biden will also be among the leaders that are attending this summit. To the neighborhood now, while Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus has appealed for the nation's patience, pledging that general elections would be held after electoral and institutional reforms were completed. He said this in a televised address marking 100 days in office. In fact, the 84-year-old leader has vowed that an election commission would be formed within a few days. But as far as the specific timeline is concerned, he did not provide any details, citing the need for significant electoral and constitutional reforms. For a quick update from Ground Zero, we have with us Mohammad Kamruzaman, senior journalist with TRT World. Thank you so much for joining us on NDTV. Some experts are arguing that if the interim administration falters in making reforms, the outcome is likely to be an early election with little progress. And in the worst case scenario, the military could also assume power. But take us through the state of affairs at the moment. Any consensus emerging among the political parties?
Thank you very much for having me. Actually, people as well as the political parties all are interested for having a fair, participatory and inclusive election. That's why actually political parties as well as people are interested to wait until a very fruitful reformation. Actually, the experience of the people as well as the political parties not so good. During the last three elections in 2014, 2018 and 2024, that was actually marred by irregularities, ballot stuffing and other interference by the then government led by Sheikh Hasina. That's why people actually interested to see a fair election. And for that reason, actually, the country needs some reformation in election commission as well as civil administration and law enforcing agencies. And Dr. Yunus actually said that they also want a fair election after the important reforms. So there is, of course, consensus among the people as well as political parties for election. But that election must be fair and participatory.
Well, the question of when the next election will be held in the neighborhood in Bangladesh is on everyone's mind. But analysts have also argued that for now, Mr. Yunus and his colleagues do have widespread support. No one is disputing that. But as we know, popular expectations are also double-edged, right?
Yes, thank you. Actually, election, people are interested because based on the experiences, they want to exercise their voting right. And that's why, of course, this government is not for a long time, but you know that already Dr. Yunus has indicated in a talk show by an international television channel that maybe 4 years, but not more than 4 years, yes. It may be a logical time, but they're interested to hold the election early. But it may take 4 years even to complete the reformation and other necessary amendment in the important departments of the government. So we also expect that the election, it will not be held even less than 2 years. This is my prediction.
Right.
Maybe this interim government, which they are claiming that as a result of a mass uprising, they have come to power. So that they need to fulfill the expectation of the people and the necessary reformation people also want. So they will ensure that reformation first, then they will hold the election. Right. This is the claim of the government. However, from the political parties, especially the main opposition political party under the Sheikh Hasina regime, that means Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, they also want election as
well. We'll be keeping a close eye on all the political developments in the neighborhood in Bangladesh. But thank you so much, Mohammad Kamruzaman, for joining us on NDTV. Now, the crucial news. Tata is set to take a majority stake in an Apple iPhone manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu, Reuters is reporting. The purchase means Tata will be in competition with Taiwan's Foxconn as one of Apple's largest contract suppliers. Now, as per reports, Tata Electronics is signing a deal to own a majority stake in Taiwanese contract manufacturer Pegatron's plant in Tamil Nadu, underlining its move to increase its capacity of assembling iPhones. The deal is likely to lead Tata Electronics having a 60% stake, with Pegatron holding the balance in the JV to run the iPhone production facility. In fact, industry executives said the Tata Group company could pay up to $150 to $200 million for the stake. Well, news and updates continue in a moment. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. In a major US foreign policy shift, President Joe Biden from the United States authorized Ukraine to use US-made long-range missiles to strike Russia. Officials say the decision was made to discourage North Korea from sending its soldiers to fight for Russia in the war. Both the White House and Kyiv's other Western allies have for months debated whether to allow the use of their long-range weapons in Russia, after Moscow had repeatedly warned that it would draw the US and NATO into war with Russia. The developments could complicate Donald Trump's promise of quickly ending the war when he comes into office, the continuation of which Kyiv and its allies increasingly seem to acknowledge amounts to Ukraine's slow death. Some foreign policy experts have also argued this. Meanwhile, Russia unleashed its largest wave of airstrikes on Ukraine in almost 3 months, firing 120 missiles and 90 drones in a sweeping attack that killed at least 7 people and caused severe damage to the power system in Kyiv. Ukrainians have been bracing for weeks for an attack on the hobbled energy system, fearing crippling damage that would cause long blackouts as winter sets in and ramp up psychological pressure at a critical moment in the war launched by Russia back in 2022. The strikes, which prompted emergency power cuts in numerous regions, came after this month's US presidential election victory of Donald Trump, whose pledge to end the war without saying how has raised the prospect of a looming push to hold negotiations. Listen in to what Mr. Zelensky had to say, followed by NDTV's Uma Shankar's ground report.
Сьогодні був один з найбільших та найбільш небезпечних за всю війну російських ударів. 210 дронів і ракет одразу, в тому числі гіперзвукова та аеробалістичні. Більшість цілей, на щастя, вдалося збити. Мішенню для Росії була саме енергетика, критична інфраструктура. І це відповідь усім, хто хотів чогось досягти з Путіним розмовами, телефонними дзвінками, обіймами, умиротворенням.
Right now, I'm in train to Kyiv. Although Russia's attacks on Ukraine have been going on for 1,000 days, the one carried out on Saturday night and Sunday morning is considered to be one of the biggest attacks in months. Drone attacks were going on since Saturday night and lasted for about 10 hours. On Sunday morning, a big missile attack was carried out, which lasted for about 2 hours, hitting energy infrastructure across the country, killing at least 5 people and causing severe damages to energy infrastructure. There is no news of damage due to the strong air defense system in the capital Kyiv. However, a drone fell on a 5-story building in area adjoining to Kyiv, causing heavy damage to the building. 30 people were evacuated safely. According to the information given by Ukraine, Russia used many types of missiles along with the drones in this attack. Air-to-ground cruise missiles were also fired from Russian fighter planes and sea-to-ground missiles as well. These missiles were fired from Russian warship from the Black Sea. It is being told that Shahid and Shahid missile, which Russia obtained from Iran, and North Korean missiles acquired from the North Korea have been also used in this attack. All the major cities, including the capital Kyiv, Chernihiv, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, and Dnipro were targeted. Areas of Ukraine bordering Hungary and Poland were also in the range of this attack, and therefore Poland also turned on its air defense system and made its fighter planes ready, scrambled so that if any missile or drone accidentally comes to its area, it can be shot down. However, this did not come to a pass. In the attack, late Saturday night and Sunday morning. Mainly Ukraine's energy sector were targeted. This country wants, the Russia wants to cripple Ukraine's energy sector by continuously targeting it. The way the cold season has started once again, the destruction of energy infrastructure will bring more problem to Ukraine. Ukraine has lost about 65% of its production capacity in the earlier attacks. In such a situation, there is a huge shortage of electricity, gas, etc. to keep people's homes warm in this severe cold. This shortage may increase further, and thus this attack came it caused very heavy price to the Ukrainian people.
By the way, North Korea may deploy as many as 1 lakh troops to aid Russia's war on Ukraine if the alliance between Pyongyang and Moscow continues to deepen. This is as per many reports. The analysis is one of the several on the evolving partnership between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, and many talk about their private discussions, which we know little about. In fact, people familiar with the matter have stressed that such a move wasn't imminent and that military support at that scale, if it occurred, would likely happen in batches with troops rotating over time rather than in a single deployment. And finally, Victoria Thielvig of Denmark has been crowned Miss Universe 2024, becoming the first Dane to ever win the competition. The 21-year-old, a competitive dancer, an entrepreneur, an aspiring lawyer, beat more than 120 other contestants to win this annual beauty pageant in Mexico City. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.